This is an Audiomint original.
Welcome to Nation of Animation, a cartoon book club podcast for all ages. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Brooke.
And today it is Bo time. That's right, we are talking about popular fast food chain Bojangles and their entries into the animated world. Short episode today, not much to talk about.
Just how
sort
much
of a silly.
We love a Bo biscuit.
We love a good Bo. You actually don't like Bojangles biscuits, so don't lie to the audience on this one.
I'm just trying to put a pleasant face to the public.
So anyway, the state of the Bojangles is strong. What we're actually here to talk about today is BoJack Horseman.
BoJack Horseman.
Cartoon. Yeah, are you going to sing that?
I can't do the theme song. I can do the credit song.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Give us a credits taste.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.
Ooh, yeah, good stuff. Oh man, we will get there. We will be talking about the music because it's all very good. So BoJack Horseman is a Netflix original animated series premiering in 2014, finishing up in early 2020. Created by Raphael Bob-Waksberg and designed by Lisa Hannawalt, following the titular character BoJack Horseman, who is an anthropomorphic horse and former 90s sitcom star, as he struggles with fame, substance abuse, trauma, and existentialism in a sort of fantastical version of Los Angeles where humans and humanoid animals live side by side.
Yes,
go ahead.
I didn't know this, but while I was looking at research for the show, because I was trying to see like where you can watch it now, obviously Netflix, but apparently it's also running in syndication on Comedy Central.
Which is interesting. I wonder if they have to censor it, because there is some stuff that there's like much more Netflix vibe than like mainstream TV channels. But we'll see. Good for them, though. I mean, it deserves syndication. It's a fantastic show, as we will see. The theme song is by Patrick Carney of the Black Keys, featuring Ralph Carney on saxophone. Ralph Carney also fairly recently passed away, so that is unfortunate. But the opening theme song is a real earworm. The end credits is by Group Love. That is a song that you just heard Brooke singing a bit of.
I love that song. Also, speaking a little bit about the music, we can talk more about it later, but there is an album of like the soundtrack of BoJack Horseman or whatever. It has a lot of great songs from the show. One of my favorites has Nina Simone's Stars, and it's like live, and it's so beautiful. So the soundtrack's really great. If you haven't listened to it, it's on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, whatever.
It's fantastic. Yeah. They really knew how to pick songs for this show. The show stars Will Arnett as BoJack Horseman, and what I think is will now be seen as his greatest role ever. I think it has finally surpassed his like time as Joe Bluth in Arrested Development.
Yeah.
This is his masterpiece. This is his design, BoJack Horseman. Also stars Allison Brie, Amy Sedaris, Aaron Paul, and Paul F. Tompkins in the main cast, with a frequent revolving door of guest stars. So the show is about BoJack, who is this horseman, as you can tell in his last name, who used to star in a 90s sitcom called Horsin' Around, which is very much in the vein of Full House and just very saccharine, overly sweet, feel good at the price of logic style of sitcom that was popular in the 90s. He plays a character just called the Horse who adopts 3 little orphans. However, that was in the 90s, and now the show is in the present day. Time has not been kind to Mr. Horseman. He is jaded. He's at the beginning of the show, he's obsessed with his past, and he's a real has-been, clinging to any sense of relevance he can find. Over the course of the show, we sort of see him challenge these senses of entitlement to his past, also reckoning with the terrible things he's done as a famous person and just as someone who has had a lot of power over people and someone with a lot of internalized problems to work out. Like I said, this is a show about substance abuse and trauma and addiction. If these are topics you're not really interested in hearing us talk about, then maybe this isn't the episode for you. We totally get that. Feel free to skip to the end and hear our real world recommendations if you just want to talk about something else. This show is very funny, but not always, and it is also, I think, one of the most realistic and well explored depictions of these heavy issues like trauma and abuse in popular culture in recent memory.
Yeah, definitely. I love BoJack. I was doing some research on it for the episode or whatever, and it was originally pitched as just BoJack the depressed talking horse,
which is just really great that it's so on the nose. I can see the network being like, maybe we walk that back a little bit.
Yeah, and there were a couple changes. Todd was called Topher, and he got a redesign from the pilot. He was BoJack's childhood friend instead of a kid who had moved into his house. Diane was a development executive instead of a ghostwriter. Mr. Peanut Butter was BoJack's agent instead of Princess Carolyn.
Oh.
And he had a rival horse actor called Honey Bucket.
Interesting. That's curious. I like that. I like the changes that were made. I think, having fewer horses makes the horses we do get feel really significant.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So early on in the show, for the first few episodes of season 1, the show's humor is pretty surface level and broad. There's just a lot of a cartoon animal says the F word, and that's funny. And it's a lot more in the style of American Dad or Family Guy with, not quite as mean of jokes as we discussed with the first episode of Bob's Burgers, but I think it had a similar trajectory of trying to figure out how it wanted to be. I think on BoJack's part, however, it's a little bit more intentional because it really feels like they made the first few episodes really broad and accessible to lure people in, to sort of sucker them into what would ultimately become this very jagged and at times harsh depiction of heavier social issues with still a lot of comedy. Lisa Hannibal and Raphael Bob-Waksberg have been friends since high school, so it's very, very cool that they are able to still work together and make cool stuff like this.
And she actually said no to doing the production design for the show the first time she was asked.
Wow.
Yeah, she said she had just finished working on a children's book project that wasn't super fulfilling, and she wasn't ready to get into another project. And they tried to bring other artists in, and nothing, sort of captured her style, which is very distinct. And then they asked her again, and she said yes.
Well, thank God they did. I think her designs are really, really key to that show, the whole show's energy. We will definitely be talking about her own series, Tuca and Birdie, in a future episode. Because it is also
I love
a masterpiece. It's very, 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 very good. So because of Netflix's time stipulations, the first season was actually produced in just 35 weeks, which is pretty crazy. That's very impressive. And the show did end with 6 seasons, although the last season was split into 2 halves. It was longer. All the other seasons are 12 episodes. The 6th season was 16, split into 2 8-episode sort of chunks. The issues the show frequently examines, because it's looking at Hollywood and fame and celebrity, it tackles also social issues like climate change, gun rights, rape culture, and white feminism / performative allyship and masculinity and all of its culturally destructive shades. This is a show that will have episodes devoted entirely to issues like abortion and gun rights in America, still having lots of jokes in them and still always punching up at the establishment and never making fun of people who are sort of affected by these terrible cultural situations. I think it has a real clear beat on who we're supposed to empathize with and how we use that empathy to really understand the people that are at fault in positions of power. Another cool thing about the show, and I think that Raphael Bob-Waksberg was really specific with the design team, was that unlike other animated sitcoms where at the end of the episode everything goes back to normal, say in an episode of Bob's Burgers they might tear up the kitchen, but in the next episode it'll be completely normal, back fixed and back to what it always looks like. In BoJack Horseman, broken things stay broken. Or if in one episode someone like BoJack drives his car through a window in one episode, and for the rest of that season, there's just a tarp over that broken window, and nothing gets fixed unless we see characters fix it. Which means that this is a very like serialized show, and events are constantly piling up. And it's also a nice way of saying that, like, hey, for these characters too, unless we see them deal with an issue, they haven't dealt with it, and nothing gets better unless you really devote the time to it. This is also seen in the opening sequence, which sort of changes content every season. It's always sort of a shot of BoJack like waking up and then like wandering through a day, but depending on what season, it'll either, you know, show him just like lounging around in his house, or like on set for a show he's working on for a particular season, or in this final season the sequence sort of like stitches through all of it and like walks us through the whole show this far, which is a really cool, you know, willingness to change and willingness to let history, its own history, constantly be relevant to the show. It is the winner of 4 Critics' Choice Television Awards for Best Animated Series, 3 Annie Awards, and 2 Writers Guild of America Awards. It was nominated for 3 Primetime Emmy Awards, including 2 for Outstanding Animated Program, but did not win any.
Yeah, never won.
Listen, awards are nice, but I think that, you know, it's telling that these great shows keep not winning awards. That's all I'm saying. So, what do we think of this show, Brooke? What are our opening thoughts?
I mean, personally, I love BoJack Horseman. Every time a new season dropped, I would mainline it, like just binge for the whole day and watch as many as I could, because I just had to see what was happening with this talking horse. My favorite character is Princess Carolyn. I love
Voiced
her
by
so
Amy
much.
Sedaris.
Voiced by Amy Sedaris. I have not picked Princess Carolyn episodes to talk about today. I hope we do another BoJack episode sometime in the future, and I'll pick.
Oh, I'd love to.
I'll pick Princess Carolyn episodes. I love her.
Who is Princess Carolyn? What's her deal? Why do you love her so much?
Well, Princess Carolyn is BoJack's agent and later manager, because she switches between. She is just, to me, she's the most sympathetic character on the show. She's been in a relationship with BoJack at the beginning, and she's obviously loved this man horse for a long time, and he loves her, but you know, he's not.
Yeah,
good.
She's a like pink cat. Also, she's from North Carolina.
Yes, I'm from Tennessee, so I relate.
South Carolina, so
to Princess Carolyn a lot.
Yeah.
And her big thing throughout the series is that she wants to have it all. She wants to have a supportive relationship, and she wants to be the best agent in the biz, and she wants to be a mother. And I love her. And everything, Amy Sedaris does a beautiful job with it. Every line she says, I like laugh at or cry at.
Sedaris's reading is like full of personality and really lets you feel this like ambition and this tireless drive from this person who's been really pushing for her dreams for decades now.
Yeah, so I love Princess Carolyn. Also, one of my favorite characters is BoJack. If you've watched the series, you know that he's sort of an anti-hero. He's not a good guy. And they're not making any bones about it.
That's the point of the show, is like, can he be redeemed, or should we be using our time on him? Yeah. And
I love him. I feel so much sympathy for him. And, you know, whether that's good or bad, or even whether that was good or bad of the show to do, that's, you know, we can talk about that later, but I love BoJack, and I always want him to be better.
Yeah, and I think that is like definitely part of the like desired experience for the show. I love this show too. It is like maybe one of my favorite shows.
Is this your favorite show?
I think it is. This is, wow, look at how the tables have turned. I didn't even do the bit because I knew it was my actual favorite show, maybe. Yeah, I think it's stellar. Whenever a new season would come out, I would actually like try to spread them out because I didn't want it to be done. I would try to like pace myself and prolong the joy of having new BoJack in the world, because that's just how I respond to the binge model of things. I also think that, you know, the core 5 characters are all so like unique and specific in their like damage and how they respond to the world. I think BoJack is a fascinating character. I don't know if he's my favorite, but I think that what you said about like, you know, sympathizing with him, even though you know that maybe the question of the show is if we should or not. I think this show is excellent at like creating negative empathy, where you feel for characters when they're at their lowest and at their worst. And in feeling for them, we not only are like wanting them to be better, but we want better for ourselves too. And to say like, have I hurt people like this? Have I ever done something this harmful to myself or others? What does it mean to empathize with these like damaged and damaging personalities? And I think that is a tough, needle to thread for a cartoon show about a depressed horse, but they did it somehow.
Yeah, so we're big BoJack fans, if you could not tell.
So the resounding answer is it is good. There's a lot of wordplay. I think what's another thing that's great about the show is like how many levels the humor works at, because they do have obviously very like heavy serious topics. There's also a lot of like really good visual puns, and like there's like a crocodile wearing Crocs, which is very simple, but it's in the background. And there's lots of wordplay. Princess Carolyn in particular has to do a ton of like tongue twisters throughout the show, which becomes like a running gag of itself, of just saying lots of ridiculously ornate turns of phrase. And there's like really cutting satire, like in these social issue episodes I mentioned. Season 2 had an episode that was like very clearly about Bill Cosby, and like media's willingness to rehabilitate like terrible people. That I like really was cutting and brilliantly brutal in how it addressed those issues. And I think it's just really cool how this show can hit on so many different levels of humor and seriousness at the same time.
Yeah.
So our episodes today that we've chosen, I'm looking at 2 episodes that are examples of the show's like animated experimenting. The show does a lot with like form and how it animates the world that these characters are in. And Brooke, you are looking at 2 episodes of a particular flavor.
Yeah. So in seasons 1 through 5, I think this is pretty commonly thought that the 11th episode of a 12 episode season, it's like, that's the episode. That's where they get you. That's because usually they give themselves an episode for fallout. So it's episode 11 where if something terrible is going to happen in the season, something heartbreaking, whatever, that's where it comes to a head. And then they give themselves a 12th one for fallout.
To figure out what to do next,
Yeah. And then the last season has 16 episodes. So it's episode 15 that gives them a lot of time for fallout. So I'm talking about the first penultimate episode and the last penultimate episode.
Which is, I very nearly did the exact same thing. So it's a good thing we communicate before we do these recordings. Ding. Hey, this is Ryan from the future while editing this episode. As we get into the specific episode discussions of BoJack Horseman, we are going to be getting into some spoilery territory. I think that the show still stands on its own, even if you know what's happening or what's coming up, so you should still watch it. But if you are spoiler averse, just know that going in, that especially during Brooke's episode discussions, as they are penultimate episodes, which is usually when the show has lots of big changes, there will be spoilers abound. Thanks, Nation. And back to Past Ryan. Ding. Great. So why don't we do, let's do something a little unique and experimental for this show. Let's go in chronological order. So let's do your first episode, and then I'll do your first episode, and then I'll do my 2 that are in the middle, and then we'll conclude with your final penultimate episode. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Great. So let's talk about season 1, episode 11.
Yeah, season 1, episode 11. It's called Downer Ending, the first penultimate episode. The basic plot. So Diane's been ghostwriting a book about BoJack. She has leaked the first chapter of her book. Everyone loves it. BoJack hates it because it paints him as a flawed character. So he goes on a bender with Todd, who is his roommate, and Sarah Lynn, who was one of the kids on Horsing Around, and then later his sexual partner, but also he's a father figure to her. So that's,
it's pretty rough. I mean, she's in the like Miley Cyrus / who played Dorothy in Wizard of Oz? Judy Garland, like style of like messed up former child star.
Sure. Yeah, so they're all teaming up to try to write the book himself and make it look better. That's sort of the first half of the episode. The second half is this beautiful imagining that BoJack has of what his life could have been if he wasn't a celebrity. So, I talked a lot about like the 11th episodes or where they get you. This one, I remember watching it for the first time and just being in awe of what they've done. Like, it was so cool. In this episode, I think we see BoJack, he's sort of at his most cutting, his worst, especially at the beginning. He's talking to Diane about the book, and he says, like, she's marrying Mr. Peanut Butter, his former rival, because he's too dumb to see that she thinks she's better than him. and he says that no one thinks Diane's interesting or pretty.
Yeah, season 1 BoJack is, a dick, for lack of a better term. He does bad things throughout, but in season 1, he's just a petty little asshole sometimes.
And, there's parts of this, like, BoJack's trying to write this book. He spends 6 hours playing with fonts. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I do that.
Mm-hmm. He also then, like, goes to work near his roommate Todd, but he's like reading a book too loud. So then he leaves, and he has, like, vacuum up toaster strudel crumbs. It's this very, like, obnoxious, procrastination that he's doing, and, like, blaming anyone but himself, of course. Yeah. That takes up a lot of the first act of the episode.
Yeah. I mentioned, like, half the episode they're going on a bender, a drug-fueled, like, bender to write the book. That's frustrating for me. For myself personally as an audience member, because the realism of the world starts to shift and we don't know, like, what's real and what's not anymore.
Yeah.
Which is very intentional of the episode. They'll show, like, BoJack and Todd planning to shoot each other with these guns they have. Oh, but then they're actually brooms.
It's just brooms, yeah.
But then this happens.
There's even a bit where, like, they're on this bender and hallucinating, and we get, like, a title card cut that's, like, 2 days later, and Diane's there and starts talking to BoJack, and then she turns into a, like, John Carpenter's The Thing monster, and then the thing says, the title card says, not 2 days, just 2 minutes, still during the trip.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that. It's obviously intentional. For me as an audience, it's so frustrating. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know they want me to be frustrated, but it was. Right. There's lots of fake outs, like, oh, that's real, oh, that's not. And then they start to finish the book, and they're like, well, how should the book end? And BoJack says that he thinks the book should end of him living in this cabin on a lake in Maine, and he swims out into the water, and he knows he can't make it back because he's old and he's tired, and he just lets the water take him. And it's very beautiful. And then Todd's like, well, that's a downer ending. Mm-hmm. Which is funny.
Hey, that's the name of the episode.
Yeah, that's the name of the episode. And this also comes up. We're going to talk about both these episodes in The View from Halfway Down and The Old Sugarman Place. So
the notion of BoJack, like, dying in water is a thing that the show comes back to a couple of times. He has a painting in his house of, like, one horse staring at another horse in a swimming pool. That is like a recurring image, and the opening sequence ends with BoJack, like, falling backwards into his own pool. So, like, keep that in mind, listeners.
Yeah. The whole episode is sort of a foreshadowing of a future episode, which is BoJack going on this trip with Sarah Lynn, drug trip and, like, road trip, and that ends in her death.
Mm-hmm. That's in season 3. Yeah,
that's also an 11th episode.
It is. That's also, this episode also involves Sarah Lynn saying it, like, wouldn't it be messed up but kind of perfect if Sarah Lynn murdered BoJack, because, like, he raised her and now she's killing him. Of course, what actually happens is the inverse of that, where BoJack lives and Sarah Lynn dies. I was amazed rewatching this how much this episode foreshadows the rest of the show.
Yeah,
and it's like, dang, was this all planned, or are they just very good at, like, realizing what they set up in the past?
Yeah, it's great. I have to talk about the BoJack's, like, could have been life in Maine. It's one of the saddest scenes in the series for me. Mm-hmm. I rewatched it last night before this, and just, like, the tenderness of it. It almost makes you not want to watch it. Like, you're seeing something so private from real people's lives. And it just sort of shows, like, all the potential that BoJack had inside of him to, like, love people and then also let people love him. In it, he has a daughter named Harper. And she says, do you think if you were a little kid, we would be friends?
Oof. It's so tender. It's just so sincere.
And that's sort of a foreshadowing, too. If you've seen the series, and this is a spoiler, sorry, I mean, we've given a lot. BoJack gets his chance at a daughter in the form of his sister, Hollyhock, and he ruins it.
It's not good. It does not go well.
Mm-hmm. It's just this beautiful scene in Maine, and Charlotte is this woman he knows who is a deer. Mm-hmm. And
they were friends when he was younger and, like, just starting in LA.
And he's always sort of wondered, what if, and showing, like, what could have been, even if it wasn't possible, really. Is just so sad. And then you get the starkness because he wakes up from the spinner in the parking lot of a bar. And none of this happened. And his life was miserable.
Princess Caroline calls someone on the phone to talk about his book, and she's like, I've never read something so gibberish. It's gibberish. It's like a bunch of Doctor Who erotic fan fiction, and then like links to YouTube videos that could never work in print, which is like a very good joke to bring us out of this like truly gutting dream sequence.
Yeah. So this episode ends, Diane's doing a panel for ghost writers, and BoJack comes in and he asks a question, and it's really the question that sort of defines the series. It has before and it does after. He says, do you think it's too late for me? Which he means, do you think it's too late for him to change and be a good person? But then it ends with some guy being like, hey, aren't you the horse from Horsing Around?
There's another good like cut down. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, sort of the synopsis and my feelings on the episode. They do a lot of beautiful animation in this one.
This is a great experimental. One of the earlier like examples of them like stretching their animation muscle and having like Diane turning into a big like creepy alien monster. There's watercolor stuff. There's
like BoJack looks at flashbacks of his life, and it's these watercolor like backdrops and paintings and stuff. And then BoJack's like animation layers start to get stripped away.
As in his drug trip, as he experiences like ego death, he like loses his outline and like bleeds into the background.
And then like Diane is Lucy from the Peanuts. And then one of my favorite animation sequences in the whole show, BoJack is on set and of Horsing Around, and he looks over and he sees these trees, and it's Penny walking into the trees as they like peel away and going to Maine. And
it's a masterful shot. It's
really nice. And there's a lot of great quotes in this one. One of my favorites, BoJack says to Princess Carolyn, now if you'll excuse me, I need to go take a shower so I can't tell if I'm crying or not. And I love that. And then there's a shot. Diane and BoJack are looking at BoJack's painting of the horse in the water, and BoJack said, shouldn't we help him? And Diane says, no, he loves treading water.
Keep that in mind, folks.
Yeah. So there's a lot of great guest stars in this one too. We've got Ken Jeong. He comes in a couple times as Doctor Who prescribes them all the pills. Patton Oswalt is in the show. He's a recurring guest star as Pinky Penguin, the publisher. Kristen Shaw is Sarah Lynn. Kristen Shaw is one of my favorite voice actors ever.
Listen, Kristen Shaw has the range. We've previously talked about her on Bob's Burgers. This is not that character. This is worlds away. It's so good.
She's wonderful. And then Olivia Wilde is Charlotte, and Stanley Tucci is there as Herb Kazaz, who is BoJack's friend who he created Horsing Around with, who BoJack screwed over.
Yeah. We will be talking more about Herb later.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's probably my favorite episode, and I'm glad you get to talk about, my favorite episode. I don't always, so.
It's a good one. It's also just so wild because this is the first season's 11th episode. This is the first time they did this trick to us, or like giving us just an episode long breakdown that burned up everything we thought we'd been doing the whole season. And it's the audacity is incredible. It's really, really, really good stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of breakdowns, let's talk about the Old Sugarman Place. What a segue.
So this is season 4, episode 2, called the Old Sugarman Place. So this is actually the first episode of season 4 to feature BoJack. He's not in the season 4 premiere because at the end of season 3, he ran away from his whole life. He drove away from LA. He fled, telling no one where he was going. Due to various personal failures and alienating the people he cared about. He is driving across the country kind of aimlessly for the beginning of this episode.
And they play the best song
in an incredible montage set to Michelle Branch's cover of Horse with No Name. Yeah, one of the best sequences ever. Maybe the best song in the whole show. Pause the cast and go listen to her cover. It's transcendent.
So good.
And this whole sequence has BoJack just silently driving and stopping at gas stations and rest stops and stuff. He frequently stops to look up at the stars, and stars and space is kind of a visual recurring motif for BoJack Horseman. Sarah Lynn loves planetariums and wanted to be was obsessed with space as a little kid. She ultimately does die in a planetarium. In season 6, BoJack's when BoJack tries to get sober for a time in season 6, and that's usually visualized by like a water bottle full of vodka, but the vodka looks like a night sky full of stars. There's something about stars in space that seems to suggest like the inevitability of like the terrible truth that BoJack can't run away from. And this sequence has him constantly trapped under it in a really beautiful way. He ends up in Harper's Landing, Michigan. Astute listeners might remember that BoJack's fake daughter is named Harper in Downer Ending.
I didn't realize that until I rewatched Old Sugarman Place yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I was like, how dare they?
See, it's so brutal, and they don't even really call attention to it. That's just for us to realize in our own time, and it hurts. The sign for Harper's Landing says, where families used to vacation before the popularization of air travel to more exciting places, which is, small towns have it rough in America. It's unfortunate. Anyway, so BoJack is going to an old family summer home that his mother used to visit. His mother is Beatrice Horseman, née Sugarman, heir to the Sugarman Sugar Company. So he goes to the Old Sugarman Place of the title. It's this house that's in utter disrepair. No one's been here in, years to decades. And most of the episode is BoJack slowly rebuilding the house with the help of his dragonfly neighbor that lives next door. His name is Eddie, voiced by Coleman Domingo. The cool thing about this episode and the sort of experiment they undergo, the reason I'm talking about it, is because this whole time BoJack is in this house, he's not really alone, because we're also seeing a flashback from the 40s for BoJack's mom as a child. And BoJack's mom so far in the show has been pretty uniformly terrible. Is that a fair way to describe her, Brooke? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, she hates him.
Beatrice openly resents having a son. She hates him and tells him he's a failure. And in season 2, she tells him that he has an ugliness inside him that he comes by honestly, and he'll never be able to fix it, which is not great parenting. But we do get a look at what she maybe means by coming by that ugliness honestly in this episode, because she is a young child. We're in the 40s. World War II is starting. It's young Beatrice with her mother, Honey, who's voiced by Jane Krakowski of 30 Rock, father Joseph, who's Matthew Broderick of, Matthew Broderick's whole career, and her brother, Crackerjack, voiced by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's about to go off to war. Crackerjack quickly dies in war, which leads Honey to have a real downward spiral of grief. And Beatrice is unfortunately caught in the middle of it. So we see these two time periods happening simultaneously. In one shot, BoJack is shivering under a blanket at night, while across the room from him, Honey and Beatrice are having a tender conversation.
I thought that was some of the coolest animation in the show, because you've got BoJack there, and then it's as Beatrice, Honey, and Joseph move through the house, it'll show the house as it was.
Right. The house is in the 40s for them, and they walk through it. The house changes with them. But wherever BoJack goes, the house is how it is in the present. It's a beautiful, really elegant, and when you see it, it makes all the sense in the world. But to come up with that idea feels such out of the box thinking, to show the place is also part of the flashback, and the place is changing as they go. Ultimately, Honey, has a breakdown very publicly at a party, and crashes a car while Beatrice is in the car because she was drinking, because it was the 40s. So everyone drank. There's a bit where someone tells Beatrice that she's clearly intoxicated, so she needs to have one more drink to steady her nerves and then drive herself home, there's a lot of good jokes in this episode about how people thought in the 40s. We'll get to that later. But one cool thing, this goes back to the notion that broken things stay broken. In the past, we see Honey crash a car into a tree, and in the present, as BoJack and Eddie are driving past, that tree is still broken. And really, again, showing that things don't fix unless we see them be fixed. There's also a great sequence at this party, because BoJack and Eddie have gone there to steal a weather vane to finish restoring the house. Eddie plays on the piano "I Will Always Think of You," which is this old 40s era song that in the past Honey and Crackerjack played together as a mother-son thing. And while Eddie's playing it in the present, Honey sings it too in the past, and they had this little grief-stricken duet across time.
And the song is so good that you think it's from the 40s, but it was written for the show. Yeah, Jesse Novak did the music for it, and he does a lot of the music for the show, a lot of the scores and stuff. BJ Novak's brother, is that right?
Really? Is that true? Good, talented family.
I feel so bad if it's not true, but I think it's true. Yes, he is the brother of actor and producer BJ Novak.
Wow, look at that. So anyway, that's the big joining moment in this episode, is this party where BoJack is so close to a spot of his mother's trauma, and he has no way of knowing it. That's something that only we, the audience, can really observe. Eddie the dragonfly the whole time is saying that he does not fly, and BoJack doesn't figure out why. When they try and like finally finish restoring the house, BoJack tries to make Eddie fly again because he thinks that it'll be like saving him. Because of course it has to be about BoJack being the hero. He can't not make a situation about him. Eddie gets furious because he swore he wouldn't fly ever since his wife Lorraine died on their wedding night when they tried to fly high and Lorraine got sucked into a jet engine. Eddie picks BoJack up and like flies super high, essentially trying to kill both of them. But BoJack fights his way out, and he lands in a lake. But he doesn't let the water take him like he said he would back in Downer Ending. He does fight to live, and he swims back to the surface, which feels like progress for a character. And this is a whole episode about BoJack, again, like inheriting his family's trauma, but he has no way to understand it or appreciate it. And I think that that's something the show comes back to again and again with the BoJack and his family stuff, is that, you know, we are all products of the people that raised us, and they were also screwed up quite badly, but we will never really understand the full, like, way that happened. Honey in the past ultimately gets lobotomized for having her public outburst, for having her like a very reasonable reaction to her son's death in a war, leaving Beatrice without a mother, which would likely, you know, frame how she would raise her own children in the time to come. Season 4 is a big Beatrice season. We learn a lot about BoJack's mom this season. And the 11th episode of this season has us going through like Beatrice's like mind as she like deteriorates from dementia. It is a real bummer.
Yeah, sure. And then Honey, Beatrice's mom, makes her promise to never love anyone as much as she loved her son, Crackerjack, which obviously affects Beatrice's relationship with BoJack because she can never really love him.
There are a lot of like great lines in this episode. At one point, BoJack calls Diane, who he hasn't spoken to since he ran away from his whole life, and he says, "I'm in Michigan. It's beautiful here, and everything sucks." And I think that is like a really neat way to sum up the whole experience for BoJack's little flirtation with like the quiet life here, because he says a couple times to Eddie that he is probably just going to live here, like retiring from the public eye and not be anybody famous anymore, until Eddie, you know, gets mad at him, and it shows that like the past is not something you can just patch up and like instantly heal over, which is why at the end of the episode BoJack destroys the Old Sugarman Place. He demolishes it, he wipes away his past, he decides he doesn't care, in a move that may not seem healthy to anyone who can think about it. But there's also a lot of good, like, funny jokes in this episode, particularly in the 40s. Like, the Sugarman family is getting their picture taken, and the photographer says, "All right, folks, this is for posterity, so don't forget to look far away sad." And then it cuts to the picture in the present, and they are indeed looking far away sad, like people always do in, like, old-timey photos. At one point, Honey says to Beatrice, "Ice cream is for boys. You can sprinkle some sugar on a lemon. That's a good, healthy girl snack," which is funny, but also like deeply sad. The way that poor Beatrice, you know, was raised in a very sexist era and was never going to have a fair shake of it. This is a pretty like yikes joke. This is still in the past. Young Beatrice says, "I'm sad to leave the summer house," as they're leaving for a year. And her father says, "Well, it'll always be here, like polio and blackface." Thankfully, neither of those are around very much anymore. And now neither is the Sugarman Place.
Yeah, fun fact about this episode that I found. So the Sugarman summer home, you can see the wallpaper on it. It's a horseshoe and an acorn. And background artist Kelly Wine says that she chose this design because acorns are poisonous to horses. So she wanted to foreshadow the detail. Doom and tragedy that would eventually befall the Sugarman family.
There are so many great details in this show. Stuff like this, like in the background design and stuff that, you know, you can extrapolate so much meaning from. Also, apparently the Sugarman family, according to horse breeders, is like phenotypically accurate. That like a horse that looks like Joseph and a horse that looks like Honey would produce a foal that looks like Beatrice, which is just like neat that someone at BoJack is doing horse genealogy research.
Well, Lisa Hannawalt, she has a horse, and if you follow her on Instagram, she'll like post videos with her horse, which is great. And
good follow.
Yeah, and she knows a lot about horses, so
makes sense. So the next episode we're talking about, we're now in season 6, episode 10. called Good Damage. This is from the back half of season 6 that was released in January of 2020, which is wild to think. It feels like that was several thousand years ago.
A different world then.
Time zero marches forward, as the show says. Anyway, this is a Diane-centric episode. Diane, at this point in the show, is living in Chicago. She's left LA. She's living with her boyfriend, Guy, who is a water buffalo played by Lakeith Stanfield. She's now on antidepressants, which is good, and is trying to write a book of personal essays that she's been approved by a publisher to do. The episode begins with like a fun musical sequence that's very like Mary Tyler Moore-esque, of like Diane being in stressful situations and being able to shrug them off because of her antidepressants, which is something that she has not historically been able to do in the show. Diane, a character defined by like one, moral outrage at the world, and two, an inability to make anything really change in the world because of how, you know, paralytic life is in the modern times, and also just her own limitations and her own personal hang-ups about power and authority and her ability to change other people. Diane was formerly married to Mr. Peanut Butter, who's, you know, a happy dog that is BoJack's rival, and they had a pretty codependent, self-destructive relationship. She's now out of that, of course, and with Guy, who's much more healthy to be with. The majority of this episode is Diane struggling to write these books of personal essays because she can't really connect with her past trauma anymore in a way that she feels is compelling. This is visualized by these like sketches of herself as like a 2D black and white, like ink on paper drawing, and like word bubbles popping up with her narration, with typos and all showing up. Big drawings of her dad show up to like tell her that she's not doing a good job and say that this is not particularly interesting. Ultimately, she tries to like write at the food court and ends up like being distracted and writing about Ivy Tran, food court detective, who is voiced by Maya Erskine of Pin 15, which is just like a middle school YA book about a teenager solving crimes in a food court. What ultimately happens though is that Diane decides that to get to a dark place, quote unquote, to write these dark personal essays, she has to go off her medication, which immediately turns all of these, you know, dream sequence visualizations a lot crueler. Like the pencil sketches, the ink pen and paper sketches get like sharper and more squiggly, and her inner voices get a lot meaner and start like calling her an idiot and unenjoyable to be around and a big failure. Really showing the withdrawal she's going through as her hallucinations become 1,000 times more hateful to her than they were than when she was on her antidepressants. Ultimately, she just decides to write Ivy Tran, food court detective, instead of her own personal essays because, well, it's easier to do and she can write it without torturing herself. And the little sketch drawing of Diane has a conversation with the full color image of Ivy Tran where she convinces her to like just let herself write the happier, easier story. She doesn't need to suffer for her art.
This episode also has like a B plot that's really setting up the rest of the season. These reporters who have been trying to track down information on Sarah Lynn's death, which BoJack was present for, have met up with Penny, who is Charlotte's daughter, who BoJack bought alcohol for underage and also like made a move on. So it's also Penny grappling with whether she should talk to the reporters about BoJack or not. So that's just what's happening behind the scenes of Diane. You know, personally for me, it's a Diane episode. Ryan knows this about me. Diane is not my favorite character. She frustrates me.
Tell us why.
I think a lot of it is maybe like, I want Diane to be a higher standard. I think because she is a woman and I expect better of her, more so than I even do of BoJack, which is not fair of me. But Diane is sort of the female BoJack that the show, as the show paints it. You know, she's doing better.
They are constantly in conversation with each other.
Yeah.
Like their arcs are constantly like 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think that Diane's afraid of being BoJack. And it just, every time she goes back to BoJack or every time she does something that I don't agree with, I hold her to such a high standard of like, Diane, you are smart. You sit here, you write these books, and you're going to do this?
Now, here's the fun part, listeners. Diane is a character I think I am most like. Not because I'm not a woman, but I think that Diane's like sense of perfectionism and the need to constantly do better and be better while also doing things that she knows are bad for her is something that like it is something I relate to, and I think that like we both have a similar like writing style and sense of humor, and both get like easily rankled by the same sorts of things. I deeply relate to Diane's maybe like my favorite character also, I think, which is a rift we'll have to get over somehow if we want to continue the show, I guess.
I don't hold it against you.
Thank you for understanding. Yeah, other stuff about this episode. One thing is that Diane's character design has changed because she's on antidepressants. She has gained some weight. And the show thankfully doesn't, make that the conflict or make it any strange fat phobic argument. There's no jokes about it really at her expense. It is just what she looks like now, and that's really, really positive and helpful, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I do like that.
Mm-hmm.
In as far as the show, I don't dislike Diane narratively, but just for me, there's
you wouldn't hang out with her.
Yeah, I wouldn't hang out with Diane.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There are still some good jokes in this episode. Like all of Diane's like dream sequence ramblings are pretty funny until they're not. Frequently Diane's from Boston, so she frequently imagines people from Boston. They always say like, "I'm from Boston, go Pats." Even when they're talking about like her upbringing. There's frequent mentions of Chicago style stuff. Guy wants to get Diane a Chicago style baked potato. Guy can be heard whistling Chicago style. When they have an argument, Guy asks if they're about to have a Boston style fight, which is just a good 1, 2, 3 of weird territorial northern cities feeling like they have to have a unique identity, even though they're just geographical locations and they're not actually that special. It's just where you live. Yeah, those are my thoughts on the experimentation of this episode being these sort of flashbacks and how they externalize the inner turmoil of like, one, being stuck creatively, and two, feeling like your experiences aren't good enough, which I think is a really novel way to look at those themes. So that's season 6, episode 10, Good Damage.
Yeah, no, I'm bringing us home. I'm talking.
Let's have
about
another laugh a minute episode.
The penultimate episode.
I finished this episode and I had to take a walk around the block when I rewatched it the other day.
Season 6, episode 15, The View from Halfway Down. I have to give a little bit of backstory of what happened before. This is a show that is very plot heavy, so just a little bit. So in the previous episode, BoJack, he had been fighting the season to stay sober, and he like fails sometimes in the season, but that's what he's fighting for. He breaks up with a former network executive named Angela. She makes him sign away his rights to horsing around. So they're removing him from the episodes, and he won't make money off of it anymore. They're buying him out. And she does it by saying, "Don't you want Sarah Lynn to have like a legacy or whatever?" And then he's frustrated about this. He breaks into his old house. He doesn't live in the beautiful house we've seen in the credits anymore. And he gets drunk while watching old horsing around DVDs. So that's sort of the backstory. The episode starts. BoJack's having a dream. He shows up at his mother's house with Sarah Lynn as a child, and he sees lots of these people from his past who have died. So we've got Herb Kazaz, who was his partner that he screwed over. We've got Corduroy Jackson, his co-star, who died of autoerotic asphyxiation on the set of their movie.
Which, to be clear, not really BoJack's fault, but he was there for it. So.
And he did find the body. So
he did find the body, so there is that.
And then Crackerjack Sugarman, who we've talked about, that's Beatrice's brother. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing, they're mentioning a show's happening later, get ready for the show. There's like oil leaking in this house.
Or
the
like
water tastes like chlorine. Yeah. They're giving us clues that BoJack is drowning in the pool.
Mm-hmm. And it, like the show knows you're going to figure it out pretty quickly. They don't like try to hide it too terribly much.
Yeah. Eventually BoJack's dad shows up, but he's Secretariat, who was BoJack's hero. And BoJack talks about how he's had this dream before. He usually wakes up before the show, but this time he doesn't. So we go through the show with BoJack, and everyone's doing these acts before they're going through this black door, which is death. And eventually BoJack realizes that he is drowning in the pool. There's nothing he can do about it. So he has to sit down and watch the show. The episode ends. He's having a conversation with Diane in his mind. He had called her and she didn't pick up the phone in real life. And it's so nice. It makes me like Diane more, even though it's not the real Diane.
It's not real.
Yeah. Which says
That's what
something
makes you
about
like
me
her.
more
It's
than
not
Diane,
even her.
probably. At the end of the episode, you hear like a heart monitor stop beeping.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a little synopsis. But the title, The View from Halfway Down, comes from Secretariat's act. He reads this poem called The View from Halfway Down because Secretariat threw himself off a bridge.
Mm-hmm. Although BoJack's dad was killed in a duel.
Yeah, so different stuff.
Actually.
I do wonder, I will say, I have always wondered. John Krasinski usually voices Secretariat, and Will Arnett does BoJack's dad. And I always thought, could they not get John Krasinski back to do Secretariat's voice? So they just made him like an amalgamation.
I looked this up. They weren't sure if they could or not, but before they actually bothered to ask, they just heard, they just like thought of Will Arnett doing his dad's voice, and they just thought that was a better idea.
Oh, okay,
so.
Okay. Good to know. You'll see in this episode, Sarah Lynn like grows up as the episode goes on, the little dream self, which is interesting. And she does this song, and it's a song that Gina, who played by Stephanie Beatriz, who was BoJack's co-star on the show Filbert, had sung before in his dreams. Oh my gosh, you gotta look it up.
The song is based on advice young BoJack gave young Sarah Lynn in like season 1 in a flashback. He was like, "Hey, listen, to be famous, you can never stop performing. Don't stop smiling and don't stop dancing until you're dead." And so the song is called "Don't Stop Dancing." And in season 5, when a dream version of Gina sings it, it's about BoJack like giving himself over to just being a product, and he should stop worrying about himself as a person and just be a character on a show. Now in this version, this like reprise that Sarah Lynn does, it is much grimmer even than that.
Yeah, and there's this line that Sarah Lynn sings, and she says, "A song you taught me when I was small." And it made me so sad. I mean, it's Kristen Shaw's wonderful voice acting. She's maybe my favorite voice actor. I absolutely love her. Yeah, and it's heartbreaking. And the big thing about this, while they talk about their lives and the things that they loved while being alive. And there's this notion of whether creating art really means something in comparison to larger accomplishments and sacrifices, because like Cracker Jack died in the war, and then Cordery Jackson killed himself accidentally while on the set of a movie, and Herb and Sarah Lynn had pursued the arts their whole life. And then there's also the question of, if we get pleasure from doing something, is it selfless? Herb brings up that he did a lot of philanthropic work. And they ask him if he enjoyed doing that, if it made him feel good. And he says yes. And then there's the argument of whether that means something. Like, it doesn't count if you felt good about it.
Right. There's also the like Beatrice and Secretariat both mentioned like the notion of like sacrifice is better than being like happy for yourself. And BoJack brings this point of like, well, sacrificing for what? If you just sacrifice to say you did, then that's really more selfish, and you didn't actually even have any fun. So what's the point?
Yeah. In regards to like whether we get pleasure from something, is it selfless? I think a lot about the arguments about nonprofits. So you have like larger nonprofits like the Susan G. Komen Foundation. You have those executives getting paid, I mean, 6-figure salaries, 7-figure salaries, while other people are not. And people are like, well, shouldn't that money be going to breast cancer research? That's what it's for. But the organization would not be doing so well, would not be making this amount of money if they were not paying these executives as much.
Right. I mean, there's also like, capitalism in that. Like, why do we have to pay people 6 figures to make them do charity work?
Yeah, definitely. Also,
yeah. It's a thorny issue. And I think there's also, this dream sequence is BoJack at its most like existential. This is characters literally debating what gives life value, which is a question everyone's been looking for the whole time in the show. Literally, like, what makes your time on Earth worth having been done? Is it other people? Is it living for yourself? Is it somewhere in between? Yeah. And it remains unanswered, but the only answer we really get is that death is terrible and scary. Because towards the end, when Herb like disappears through the door, BoJack says like, "I'll see you on the other side," and Herb says, "Oh no, there is no other side. This is all there is."
Speaking about Herb, Herb is voiced by Stanley Tucci, who I also love in sexual and creative ways. I love Stanley Tucci. He's
sure, who doesn't?
My pinned tweet on Twitter right now is something I tweeted years ago, and it says, am I into Stanley Tucci because I have daddy issues, or do I have daddy issues because I'm into Stanley Tucci?
Now, listen, if we could somehow get Stanley Tucci as a guest on the show, would you even want that, or would it shut you down?
No, I would
it be
love
too
it.
much?
I would love it.
Okay, good. Mr. Tucci, our phones are waiting.
Please, God, call us. But he does beautiful voice acting work in this one. He is like leading BoJack through the show or whatever. His voice, I watched this last night, and oh my gosh, you know the line you're talking about, Ryan, like, this is all there is. Like, the way he delivers it, it's beautiful.
It is soothing and gentle, and that makes it worse.
It's just so good. This episode, you know, speaking of Stanley Tucci, it has a million guest stars. Almost none of the main cast is in it. I think it's BoJack and Diane.
Diane by voice, but not physically.
Yeah. So you've got Brandon T. Jackson in as Corduroy, Stanley Tucci as Herb, Kristen Shaw back as Sarah Lynn, Wendy Malick as Beatrice, Lin-Manuel Miranda comes in again as Cracker Jack, and then Zach Braff plays himself, Zach Braff, the waiter.
Zach Braff, who has died in the BoJack world because he was eaten alive by people in a season 4 episode, which is why Zach Braff is the waiter here, because he died by cannibalism. Yeah. So he gives everyone else their food.
Animation-wise, if you're looking at this episode, to me, the real achievement of it was the eeriness of the house they were in. The proportions are all wrong. So when you look at it, it's like it tapers up to a point. I don't know. You watch it and you're like, ooh, this puts me off. And it's all the animation. They've done such beautiful work on just drawing all of that it's
the house great. And the lights and like light and shadows in this thing, it is like German like expressionism. It's like Dr. Caligari. It's just like weird angles, enormous proportions, and none of it adds up, which makes it feel even more foreboding before we even realize what's going on.
Yeah. So I really enjoy this episode. I think it's a hard episode to watch. I think especially, you know, if you're someone who struggles with depression, I think it's a hard episode to watch, but it's one of the best episodes they did, I think.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece, but it is, the like next to last episodes are all kind of about like diving into the negative feelings and like really pushing yourself into them head on. And then the 12th episode is where we try and rebuild and, you know, pull ourselves back up for air.
You know, I guess I won't say what happens in the 12th episode, just in case you have watched all of them up to that point,
except for that one, and now you're waiting.
You don't know what it is. I won't even say. Go watch.
I won't say. I'll say I think the ending is one of the better TV endings in recent memory. I think it is a really effective finale.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's all I'll say. Also,
So
there.
That's the ultimate penultimate episode of BoJack Horseman.
Very good. So now we must turn from our favorite episodes to the sketchy side. And we do have a bit to talk about in BoJack Horseman. And let me say that again, like it's actually the name of the show. In BoJack Horseman. It's my first time seeing the show. In BoJack. Specifically, the sort of big red neon sign of problem we have to talk about is the casting of Diane Nguyen. Diane is a Vietnamese American character who is voiced by Alison Brie, who is not Vietnamese American, who's quite Caucasian. This was done, you know, early in the show, and they do around season 4, season 5 has an episode directly about it, where Diane like goes to Vietnam and realizes how little connection she has. However, they don't recast her at any point. She's still voiced by a white person until the end of the show. Raphael Bob-Waksberg has been on record saying that they screwed up with this. He's, you know, really accepted that this is the wrong move.
And he talks about, you know, they did try to make progress with it later. He talks about their casting directors, Linda LaMontagne. And he says that they intentionally, every guest star role, looked to fill it with a person of color if they could. Is that enough? I don't know.
Right. I mean, it is, you know, they never undid it, and they never like replaced Alison Brie. And who can say, you know, I'm sure Alison Brie, I believe, has also spoken about understanding the mistake and understanding the flaw in her casting.
But doesn't it kind of feel like, you know, I'm not trying to demonize anyone. Like, if you really understood your mistake, if you really understood on both sides, wouldn't you recast? Wouldn't you step down from the role?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it is, you know, a real rough asterisk on BoJack Horseman's legacy for sure. Yeah, I mean, Raphael Bob-Waksberg has a quote here. He said, "I'm very proud of the movement we've made, but we're always going to be somewhat hobbled in our efforts because of our original sin." That original sin being the casting of Alison Brie as Diane. I think that's true. I think that's just something that when we talk about the show, we have to say they did do this bad thing, and it just is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think they know that. Is that better that they know that? I guess.
Right.
You know, I don't want them to think it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure whatever Raphael Bob-Waksberg's next show is, he won't do this again. But
Yeah.
Alice and Brie will always be Diana. That's just how it is. Um, so beyond that specific event, there's also the question of how BoJack tackles its subject matter. BoJack Horseman is a show about self-destructive characters and is a show about like damaged people, damaging people, and it's a show about like toxic behaviors and relationships. BoJack himself, especially later in the series, in season 5 especially, when he is going through an arc of like being addicted to pain pills, he does a lot of mean things that are like really tough to sit through and watch. And there is the question of like, does this show glamorize self-destructive behavior? Is it saying that like, hey, if you are, a person who hurts other people, or a person who has like toxic tendencies, it's okay. Just, it is, you are what you are and you can live with it. Is it sort of glamorizing that? This is dealt with explicitly in season 5 when BoJack is on this parody of like a grim and gritty cop show, like True Detective, that's called Filbert. And, BoJack says that it's a show about like, barely scabbed over people, like being okay with being broken. And is, I think that was the writers exploring their own responsibility as makers of BoJack Horseman. Cause, there's another show that was getting popular around this time too, called Rick and Morty, with a main character who is also deeply flawed and deeply damaged and likes to hurt people, and is often depicted as heroic because of these negative traits. And I think that BoJack as a character is similar, except that he has a bit more self-awareness, and the writers have a bit more self-awareness and like dragging him down. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the show does over glamorize toxic behavior, or if it is just, leading by example and showing the flaws rather than like really telling us enough about the flaws, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then I think this feeds into the next thing we sort of want to talk about with it, is like BoJack as a character. I spoke earlier about how much I love him and I want him to be good, and it's because of the show. Like, I'm not wrong for
You're not
thinking
misinterpreting
that, because that's what
it. Yeah.
the audience is being made to think. And then obviously this is the crux of the show itself, right? Can BoJack be better? Is it okay if we still like him? But then I think it's very fair to ask the question, like, why would you put this out there then? Like, why would you sit here and try to make us sympathize with this man horse who, has done these terrible things that are truly, some of them are unforgivable.
Right, and I think that's the question, and that is like plays into the end of the series. Like, it's not a question of forgiveness so much as like, can you live with yourself? Yeah. And I think that, again, without saying too much about how it ends, I think it is fairly open ended. This is a show that knows you can't just get like an easy happy ending.
Yeah.
But it does, like you said, he does terrible, not just like illegal, but like morally reprehensible things, and it's up to each of us to decide whether he has done enough penance, I guess.
I think you're right that you talked about negative empathy earlier. Like, when we love someone like BoJack, how that forces us to look into ourselves and see, why do I love him? What parts of him do I relate to?
Do I need to root for a character to identify with them? And if the answer is no, then like, what do I do with that? I think this is, we're coming out of the golden age of like the quote unquote golden age of TV, which shows like Mad Men or Breaking Bad or whatever, that also have like terrible anti-heroes that we're still meant to identify, that the viewer is meant to like enjoy the power fantasy and identify with. And I think what BoJack does is frequently show how like hollow that fantasy is. Like, I wouldn't want to be BoJack most days.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, we talked about one element that is undeniably sketchy, the casting of Alison Brie, something that they should not have done. They acknowledge they should not have done it. It was wrong.
They've called the original sin, so
and
they
then,
seem pretty aware.
We've talked about 2 other elements that are sort of the point of the show, but also things that you could find as flaws with the show, which I get.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it speaks to the ambition that they're willing to take big swings on like glamorizing self-destruction and negative empathy. But anyway, that's the sketchy side. And now we're going to do our next segment. We're going to call this a bonus episode, where we're going to look at something else made by the creators and talk about it a little bit. Brooke, would you like to go first?
I will. I love Lisa Hannah Walt. I follow her on Twitter. I donated $10 to this horse charity that she was like boosting, because I wanted her to take a picture of a horse and tell me its names. And it was like my horse. I know that sounds very silly, but I did it, and she tweeted at me.
It sounds great.
And it's like, I mean, I could frame that.
What was your horse?
She gave me like 7 and named them all.
Nice.
Okay.
Hell yeah, Lisa Hannah Walt.
She will never remember me at all. I hope she listens to this though. I so hope she does. Yeah, I love her. And then she's created, we talked a little earlier, and we'll do an episode on this. One of my favorite shows, Tuca and Birdie. I love Tuca and Birdie.
Which is just a fantastic show.
When it was canceled, oh my gosh, but Adult Swim, thank you, our savior. Anyway, but I want to talk about her comic book called Coyote Dog Girl. It's so cool. So she did this comic book. It's about a girl who's part dog, part coyote. It's like a take on a Western.
A coyote dog girl.
Yes, a coyote dog girl. It's taking like Western tropes and putting it in. So she has a horse that she rides. She's an outlaw on the run. And she has to like make these like marauding choices. And you can look, there's a preview on Google Books if you're interested. You just want to see like, this is what it looks like, whatever. So there's this panel and she is sitting on the horse and she says, "Do you really love me or am I just all you have?" It's so, and the art, it's her artwork. It's so beautiful. I love her. And I love this super cool comic book that she's done. So it's on sale. You can buy it. You can go to her website and buy it. It's been published by Drawn and Quarterly. So you can go to drawandquarterly.com/coyote-dog-girl and buy it. It's like $23.
Nice.
Well worth it. And it's just so cool. If I could draw at all, I would want to be exactly like Lisa Hannah Walt. I'm not an artist in the slightest, but she's like one of my heroes.
Lisa Hannah Walt and Raphael Bob-Waksberg are both so good at just like really concisely writing a really complicated and deeply upsetting emotional feeling. Like, do you really love me or am I all you have? That's so good. And speaking of like concisely written things, the bonus episode I want to talk about is from Raphael Bob-Waksberg's Twitter feed. So this is a string of tweets he did in like 2016, I believe. This was on July 11th, 2016. He did this tweet thread called "Does Marge Have Friends?" And this is Raphael Bob-Waksberg essentially writing the series finale of The Simpsons in just like a series of tweets. He calls it a poem in 15 tweets. And the poem, I'm going to read a little bit from it. Maybe not the whole thing because it is 15 whole tweets. Sure. But here's how it goes. Who are Marge's friends? Is Helen Lovejoy a friend? Sarah Wiggum? Agnes Skinner? To whom does Marge spill her secrets over coffee on cold days? Who laughs at Marge's jokes? Who knows Marge truly and well? Who tells Marge to leave the brute, knowing she won't? You don't have to stay. You deserve so much more. Who, on a morning walk, sees a tall blue bush, texts a photo to Marge, "This made me think of you." Surely not Lenny or Kirk or Luann. Did Marge mourn for Maud Flanders? Late nights at the kitchen table, staring at her own hands. Is she haunted still by her absence? And it kind of goes from there. It's just a very like moving and sad like meditation on like what Marge Simpson's life is actually like. It goes on to have like a imagined conversation between Marge and Maud Flanders before she died in that show's history. And I think it really shows that what Raphael Bob-Waksberg as a writer really likes to do is take silly premises like, cartoon horses and The Simpsons and find just the most aching aspect of them and blow them up. And I really think that this sweet thread is one of my favorite pieces of literature of all time. So that has been our bonus episode, and those have been our thoughts on BoJack Horseman. Quite a good show. Imperfect, messy, and definitely not something you want to dive into if you are not in the right headspace. But definitely something worthy of artistic merit and a real achievement from all involved. Yeah.
I mean, it's like you, it is one of my favorite shows. Maybe not my absolute favorite, like some people, but it's definitely one of my favorites. And just rewatching these episodes made me want to go back and rewatch the whole series. So I'll probably start doing that today.
Fantastic. Sounds like a good day. Okay, so as we leave Mr. Horseman behind, Brooke, do you have any real-world recommendations you'd like to share with our nation?
I've been playing this game on my phone called Good Pizza, Great Pizza. I love phone games, first of all. And it's really nice and really fun and sort of low stress, and you're just making pizzas. So, yeah.
Delightful. Wonderful.
What, Ryan, have you been up to this week besides animation?
Besides animation, this week I really want to put over raspberry jam. I got some really tasty raspberry jam from the grocery store near where I live, and I've been having it on toast for breakfast lately. It is delicious. I know that grape jelly is like the sort of household name when we think about spreadable fruit confection, but yeah, I encourage you this week to go outside your comfort zone. Get yourself a raspberry jam or like a blueberry jam, or even like maybe like a peach preserve or something.
Nice.
Explore your surroundings.
Great. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for listening to us talk about one of our favorite shows, BoJack Horseman, and
Absolutely.
the nation of animation. The state of animation is strong.
Nation of Animation is hosted by Ryan Stevens and Brooke Aaron Smith and produced by Danny Mendoza. Our show art is by Urvashi Lele, and our theme music is by Jacob Menke. Be sure to follow us at Cartoon Book Club on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for listening!